The studio lights were as bright as ever, the cameras positioned perfectly, and the production team buzzing around like it was any ordinary broadcast day. But for Ben Shephard, nothing about this day felt ordinary. He stood backstage, holding a small envelope that had quietly shifted the rhythm of his world. It wasn't dramatic or dark, just a reminder that life sometimes throws unexpected challenges your way. What no one knew was that Ben had recently received concerning health news. Nothing catastrophic, nothing hopeless, just something real enough to remind him to slow down, to breathe, and to take better care of himself. It wasn't a secret meant to shock the world. It was simply part of his life, and he wanted to speak about it with honesty. But Ben being Ben, he handled the weight of the moment with the same charm, humor, and warmth that had made him beloved by millions. Even in uncertainty, he had this uncanny ability to create hope, to turn fear into connection. As he stepped onto the set, the audience greeted him with the familiar wave of cheers. Yet today, his smile carried a softness that many had never seen before. Not sadness, just sincerity. The moment he began speaking, the studio fell quiet. Ben shared that he had undergone routine medical checks, that something concerning had been spotted, and that he would be stepping back from some commitments to focus on treatment, rest, and recovery. He spoke in calm, grounded words. No drama, no fear-mongering, just truth. But then something unexpected happened. As he thanked the viewers for years of support, thanking them for laughter, for loyalty, for the messages that kept him going, his voice wobbled, just for a second that felt oddly monumental. Tears didn't fall dramatically. He simply paused, caught off guard by the wave of emotion that came from realizing how deeply people cared. The moment was raw, but gentle, heartfelt, yet hopeful. Not despair, humanity. And then, leave it to Ben to break the tension with his signature humor. I sniffed, glanced at the camera, and joked, "Well, that's embarrassing. I promised myself I wouldn't get emotional today, and here we are. My sons are definitely going to tease me for this." The studio chuckled, and the atmosphere shifted from heavy to warm. But the person affected the most wasn't the audience. It was his wife, Annie, watching from backstage. She had been his anchor long before the public ever knew his name. Annie had seen every side of Ben, the confident presenter, the exhausted parent, the man who burned toast every single morning without fail. And she knew how hard it was for him to be vulnerable in front of millions. As soon as the broadcast ended, Annie walked toward him with that familiar look, the one that said, "I'm here, we're okay, we'll do this together." They didn't say anything dramatic. They didn't need to. Their quiet understanding was the foundation of everything. Of course, leave it to Ben to lighten the moment. "Did I look as ridiculous as I felt?" he asked her, attempting a weak grin. "Worse," she teased, but in a cute way. And just like that, the emotional weight dissolved into laughter. Behind the scenes, the response from fans began pouring in instantly. Messages of love, encouragement, and cheer. People didn't panic. They supported him. They admired how he handled his announcement with honesty instead of fear, with grace instead of dramatics. Then spent the next few weeks focusing on his health, taking time off work, eating proper meals instead of whatever snack he'd grabbed between shoots, and letting Annie fuss over him in the overly affectionate ways she had perfected over the years. They joked often about how Ben was the worst patient imaginable. He hated resting, he hated being told to slow down, and he definitely hated herbal teas, which Annie insisted were good for the soul. One afternoon, as Ben complained loudly about the taste of another healthy smoothie Annie had forced upon him, she laughed and said, "If you survive my cooking experiments, you can survive anything." Their home became filled with moments like that, simple, imperfect, joyful. They spent evenings watching movies, afternoons attempting to garden, Ben managed to kill 3 plants in a week, and mornings sitting together in silence, appreciating the stillness they once took for granted. And surprisingly, this new chapter brought them closer than ever. Ben often found himself reflecting on his journey, The endless travel, the early morning call times, the constant drive to be everywhere, do everything, and never miss a moment. His schedule had always defined him, but now he was learning that slowing down didn't mean stepping away from his life. It meant stepping deeper into it. And Annie? She loved seeing this version of Ben, the man who finally had time to make breakfast without rushing, the man who remembered to water the plants, well, sometimes, the man who realized that strength didn't always mean pushing forward without pause. And it didn't hurt that she enjoyed teasing him relentlessly. One evening, she found him reading a health magazine. "Interesting," she said, raising an eyebrow. "You're turning into the kind of person who actually reads labels now." "Desperate times," Ben replied dramatically. They burst into laughter, the kind that echoed through the house and reminded them that even in challenging seasons, joy still found its way in. As weeks passed, Ben gradually prepared to return to work, not fully, not rushed, but at a pace that honored his well-being. And the moment he stepped back into the studio, the welcome he received was nothing short of extraordinary. Not a sad welcome, not a fearful one, a celebratory one. People were happy to see him. They were proud of him. They admired the resilience, the vulnerability, and the humor he brought to every step of the journey. Ben smiled, looked into the camera, and said, "Thank you. Truly, I didn't expect all this support, but I appreciate it more than you know." And just like that, the world realized something important. Ben's story wasn't about fear. It was about love, about hope, about partnership, about laughter in difficult times, about choosing to live fully, even when life throws a detour your way. And for anyone who had followed his journey, it was a reminder that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it speaks softly, with a smile, and says, "We're going to be okay." If you enjoy stories like this, stories filled with heart, humor, resilience, and real human connection, stick around for the next one. There are always more stories to tell.